Have you noticed how small jokes sometimes feel heavier than direct insults? The people who use them are not playful, they are measuring you. Every tiny taunt is like a secret exam for your emotional stability. Most people think a taunt is only a bad joke or casual disrespect. They laugh it away or reply with another joke or stay silent inside. They never realize the deeper pattern, the pattern of invisible psychological testing. A tiny taunt is a controlled strike at your self-image and inner balance. It is small enough to deny, yet sharp enough to pierce your confidence. The hidden goal is not the laugh, the hidden goal is your reaction. When someone uses these tiny attacks repeatedly, they are secretly collecting data about you. They want to know what breaks your calm, what shakes your decisions, what triggers your insecurity. They want to know where your emotional armor is thin and where your mental walls leak. A dark manipulator never begins with open cruelty or loud disrespect. That would reveal their intent too quickly and activate your defense instantly. Instead, they begin with something you are trained to ignore, the very small taunt. You hear a comment about your habits, your choices, your way of thinking. It sounds like a joke, it sounds like casual humor, it sounds harmless. But inside your body, a micro-freeze happens, a tiny spike of tension appears. Your mind asks if you should defend yourself or stay quiet and smile. That hesitation is the exact moment the manipulator is waiting for silently. Your confusion gives them a first answer. You are not fully anchored yet. Now notice how they watch your eyes more than your words after the taunt. They observe your shoulders, your breathing, your posture, your micro-expressions of hurt. They are not listening to your joke back. They are reading your emotional leak. When you over-explain after a taunt, they register that you fear misjudgment. When you instantly apologize, they learn you are trained to blame yourself first. When you mock yourself to fit in, they see you as easy to reshape. Slowly, the tiny taunts turn into a private experiment about your mental strength. Each comment becomes a small pressure on your identity, a push on your boundaries. If you tolerate it, they increase the dose until you stop recognizing yourself. Machiavelli once said that if you want to know someone, give them power. A modern manipulator adds a twist. If you want power, study their reactions. So they give themselves the power to hurt slightly, just to watch you flinch. The taunt is designed to stay below the threshold of open confrontation. If you call it out, they can easily deny any dark intention. They will say you are too sensitive or that you cannot take jokes. This creates a double trap around your mind and emotional energy. First, you feel the sting but doubt your right to feel hurt. Second, you fear being labeled weak if you speak about the sting. This is how tiny taunts slowly drain your emotional strength without clear evidence. You keep questioning your own perception instead of questioning their repeated pattern. You begin policing your own feelings while they continue refining their method quietly. Albert Bandura once said that people learn by watching what gets rewarded or punished. When manipulators see that taunts bring them control and zero consequences, they feel rewarded. Your silence becomes a signal that this method works and can be expanded. Over time, your nervous system adjusts to these constant silent exams of strength. You might think you are becoming stronger because you react less on the surface. In reality, you might be becoming numb, not strong, and that difference is dangerous. True strength is conscious choice, not automatic shutdown of your emotional signals. When you ignore every sting, you also ignore important data about hidden disrespect. Your mind stops flagging danger because you keep forcing it to stay quiet. Dark psychology uses this adaptation against you with careful precision and patience. The more you tolerate, the more complex and personal the taunts become. They shift from surface topics to your deepest values, dreams, and vulnerabilities. You will notice a strange pattern if you observe closely and honestly. The taunts always appear at moments when your confidence is quietly rising. They appear when you are about to decide something important for yourself. This is not random bad timing. This is pressure testing of your growth. The manipulator wants to see if a single sentence can derail your momentum. If they can shake you with words, they never need visible control. Tiny taunts also create a hidden scoreboard in the mind of the manipulator. Every time you bend your behavior after a taunt, they mark a silent victory. Every time you doubt yourself instead of their intention, they level up their influence. Soon, you start predicting their reactions and adjusting yourself before they even speak. This is the deepest level of control, when you become your own jailer. You censor your expression to avoid future taunts, without realizing you are self-training. Once this internal training is complete, they hardly need taunts anymore. Your mind now runs their script automatically, protecting their comfort over your own. You defend them in your thoughts, while they continue draining your emotional energy. The most dangerous part is simple: you still think it is all harmless. You still call it humor, you still minimize your pain, you still laugh. You never ask why respect always becomes a joke when it is about you. So the real question is not why they throw these tiny taunts. The real question is something far sharper and far more uncomfortable for you. Who trained you to accept these secret exams as normal signs of connection? Have you noticed how some comments hit you harder only when you are alone? That delay is not accidental, it is part of the hidden design. Your mind feels safe to reveal the truth only when no one is watching. The second layer of tiny taunts is not about the taunt itself. It is about the emotional aftershock that arrives when the room is silent. Most people underestimate this stage, but manipulators depend on it deeply. A dark manipulator studies two reactions, the one you show and the one you hide. Your surface reaction reveals your public strength. Your delayed reaction reveals your private weakness. This difference becomes a map of how to influence you without being caught. When a taunt is delivered with a smile, your social conditioning activates immediately. You feel pressure to appear calm, polite, unbothered, and collected. Your body tries to protect your image, even if your mind feels the pain. But the moment you go quiet later, the pain becomes sharper and more detailed. You replay the words, the tone, the hidden meaning, the audience reaction. This replay is the manipulator's true weapon, because it drains you silently. Dark psychology uses delayed emotional loops to create mental fatigue. The goal is to make you lose clarity, so your reactions become predictable. Predictable reactions are easy to control and easy to manipulate further. When a taunt stays in your mind for hours, it forms a new internal belief. You start thinking something must be wrong with you for feeling this much. That shame becomes a pressure point the manipulator will touch again. You never notice how these tiny taunts become reference points inside you. You compare your future choices to the memory of that previous sting. You start adjusting yourself to avoid another indirect humiliation. This conditioning is subtle but extremely effective in long-term influence. Machiavelli once said that if you want control, shape their expectations first. A manipulator follows this principle carefully by shaping your self-expectations. Once your expectations shift, your behavior bends without external force. You begin choosing silence over expression, tolerance over boundaries, calm over honesty. You think you are staying peaceful, but you are actually staying afraid. The delayed pain also creates an invisible bond between you and the manipulator. Your body associates them with emotional tension that feels unresolved. Your mind keeps searching for closure from the same person, causing the discomfort. This is why people often seek validation from someone who keeps hurting them subtly. They want the next interaction to undo the sting of the previous one. They chase approval from the source of the problem without realizing the trap. Albert Bandura once said that people repeat actions that reduce internal discomfort. Tiny taunts increase discomfort, while pleasing the manipulator reduces it temporarily. So you end up pleasing the person who destabilizes you, thinking it brings peace. This cycle creates a psychological dependency built on tiny shocks and tiny rewards. The manipulator does not need to speak loudly or act aggressively anymore. Your mind now responds to their smallest signals as if they hold authority. The aftershock also weakens your sense of reality in dangerous ways. You doubt your memory of the taunt, you doubt your tone, you doubt your reaction. Soon, you begin rewriting the event in their favor to protect the connection. You tell yourself they did not mean it, or you misunderstood them. You repeat excuses that make your pain seem exaggerated and unnecessary. You defend their behavior more than you defend your own emotional dignity. This is where dark psychology becomes almost invisible. The manipulation hides inside your rationalization, not inside their behavior. You become the storyteller who protects their pattern at your own expense. When a taunt is small enough, you struggle to admit it hurt you. And because you struggle, the manipulator gains more confidence to escalate. They learn that the softer the attack, the deeper it sinks inside your mind. The second layer of influence is not about words anymore. It is about shaping your internal dialogue until it becomes their voice. You stop asking why they said it and start asking why you reacted. Once this shift happens, they no longer need to test you openly. Your emotional system now tests itself based on their silent expectations. This is the critical moment where influence becomes internalized control. But there is an even deeper stage you must understand next. It reveals why some people use tiny taunts even when they do not need validation. Their motive is not insecurity or immaturity, it is something far more strategic. So the real question becomes simple and unsettling. When someone tests your reactions without reason, what hidden plan are they preparing for? Have you noticed how some people taunt you only when you look confident? They never strike when you are low, they strike when you are rising. Their timing exposes a motive far deeper than simple insecurity. The third layer of tiny taunts reveals a strategic intention. This intention hides behind politeness, calm expressions, and subtle humor. But under the surface, it is a precise psychological operation. A manipulator uses taunts not just to test your weakness, but to interrupt your power. They study when you seem stable, collected, or mentally centered. Then they insert a small verbal cut to break your internal rhythm. This attack is designed to create a pause in your momentum. Your confidence trembles for a second, your certainty flickers slightly. That one flicker is enough to derail your internal state temporarily. Dark psychology calls this a micro-destabilization technique. The goal is not to insult you, but to recalibrate your emotional balance. When your balance is shaken, your behavior becomes easier to adjust. A confident mind moves with direction, but a destabilized mind moves with permission. The manipulator wants you to wait for their cues subconsciously. Your rising confidence threatens their silent control, so they interrupt it early. Machiavelli once said that if you want to weaken someone, disturb their sense of progress. Modern manipulators follow this idea through small attacks that look harmless. The more harmless they appear, the more effective they become over time. A tiny taunt during your confident moment forces you to self-check. You second-guess your decisions, your style, your choices, your identity. You shift from action mode to reflection mode instantly. Reflection mode is where the manipulator gains power silently. When you pause to analyze yourself, you stop noticing their pattern. Your inner critic becomes louder than your instinct. The taunt acts like a psychological hook that pulls you backward. It disconnects you from your emotional momentum and creates hesitation. Hesitation is the oxygen of manipulation, because hesitation kills clarity. The manipulator does not want your downfall or your destruction. They want you stable enough to function, but insecure enough to obey. They want you capable but doubting, intelligent but hesitant, aware but unsure. So they keep your confidence on a leash through small verbal triggers. Every time you rise too fast, they pull you back with a disguised comment. Every time you speak too firmly, they soften you through subtle mockery. The real danger is not the taunt itself, but the internal shift it causes. Your brain associates confidence with consequences, small but painful. So you subconsciously limit your own voice to avoid the next sting. This creates a behavioral pattern where you play small to stay safe. You lower your presence, you minimize your opinions, you shrink your expression. You do not even notice that this shrinking benefits them more than you. Albert Bandura once said that behavior repeated under pressure becomes habit. Your mind begins forming a habit of staying below the threshold of attention. You become strategically silent in moments you should stand firm. The manipulator reads this shift as a sign that their method works. Their tiny taunts now function like remote buttons that control your reactions. They push these buttons whenever they need psychological advantage. What you see as sudden mood changes are actually engineered triggers. What you feel as discomfort is actually subtle behavioral conditioning. What you believe is overthinking is actually emotional programming. Tiny taunts are also used to create selective confusion. The manipulator wants you unsure about when to feel proud or ashamed. This confusion makes you seek emotional clarity from them unconsciously. You start valuing their approval more than your own inner signals. You look at their face before finishing your sentence. You adjust your tone when you sense their attention shifting. Without realizing, you begin aligning your identity around their reactions. This alignment gives them silent control over your emotional environment. Your confidence becomes negotiable, influenced by their micro-judgments. The strategic purpose becomes clearer with time. They do not want you broken, they want you modified. They want your strength present but accessible, your power visible but manageable. Tiny taunts serve as their method to shape your mental habits without confrontation. They create emotional detours inside your personality, small but meaningful. These detours slowly redirect your path toward behaviors that benefit them. You think you are staying calm to avoid conflict. In reality, you are staying predictable to avoid their next psychological test. And predictability is the deepest form of vulnerability in manipulation. But there is a fourth layer you have not seen yet. It explains why these people become bolder, sharper, and more consistent over time. Their confidence in controlling you does not come from your reactions alone. So the question now becomes far more unsettling. If tiny taunts are tests, what makes them so certain you will keep failing? Have you noticed how their taunts become sharper once you stop reacting? Your silence does not calm them, it encourages them. They read your calm face as confirmation that you can be shaped further. The fourth layer reveals a truth most people never recognize in time. A manipulator becomes bolder not because you are weak. They become bolder because you unknowingly train them to be confident. Every ignored taunt teaches them a lesson about your tolerance. Every fake laugh teaches them a lesson about your boundaries. Every polite smile teaches them a lesson about your emotional limits. Dark psychology calls this reinforcement by silence. The manipulator receives invisible rewards from your lack of resistance. These rewards increase their belief that you can be managed without conflict. People think manipulators rely on power or control. In reality, they rely on your predictability. Predictability is a resource, and you become a resource they can use. Machiavelli once said that if you want loyalty, create dependency. Modern manipulators twist this idea. If you want control, create predictability. Your reactions become their compass for future behavior. The moment you do not challenge a subtle insult, they learn something new. They learn that you prefer peace even at the cost of self-respect. They learn that you avoid discomfort even when truth is necessary. This knowledge makes them fearless in their strategy. They know exactly which emotional strings produce which responses. Your mind becomes a pattern they have memorized like a secret codebook. Their taunts become precise because they are no longer guessing. They know which topics shake you, which words sting you, which tones silence you. Their comments evolve into targeted psychological nudges. These nudges feel personal because they are personal. They are designed for your specific fears, your old wounds, your insecurities. You never told them these things, but your reactions revealed everything silently. Albert Bandura once said that behavior observed consistently becomes behavior repeated confidently. A manipulator grows confident by observing your emotional compliance. Each time you retreat, they advance without hesitation. Your tolerance creates a silent hierarchy. You become the emotionally flexible one, they become the emotionally rigid one. You adjust to them, but they never adjust to you. Slowly, the emotional gravity of the connection shifts. Their words matter more than your feelings. Their reactions matter more than your boundaries. You start thinking more about not upsetting them than about respecting yourself. You plan your words, your tone, your expression around their possible responses. This self-monitoring steals your natural authenticity in small pieces. The manipulator sees this shift and interprets it as submission. Your silence becomes permission. Your discomfort becomes acceptance. Once they believe you will not push back, they escalate their tests. The taunts become more direct, more personal, more confident. But they still keep them small enough to stay deniable. This escalation is not about cruelty. It is about mapping the extent of their influence over you. They are measuring how far they can shape your reality without resistance. They also use these escalations to see if anyone else notices the pattern. If others laugh with them, their power increases. If others stay silent, their confidence solidifies. The manipulator now operates with a dangerous assumption. They believe you are emotionally conditioned to absorb without questioning. They believe you are loyal to peace more than you are loyal to yourself. And here lies the deeper psychological twist. They escalate because they think you will never break the pattern. They assume you have become too accustomed to the discomfort to challenge it. But the fifth layer exposes something even more unsettling than this assumption. It reveals why manipulators sometimes switch from tiny taunts to sudden kindness. This shift has nothing to do with compassion and everything to do with control. So the real question becomes cold and sharp. When they suddenly treat you kindly after hurting you, what are they protecting? Have you noticed how the same person who taunts you suddenly becomes kind again? Their tone softens, their words sound supportive, and their behavior shifts instantly. This confusion is not random. It is a calculated reset of your emotional state. The fifth layer of tiny taunts reveals a psychological pattern called emotional balancing. A manipulator alternates between small stings and sudden warmth to keep you unstable. They want your mind swinging between doubt and relief, so you never find clarity. Dark psychology uses this contrast to create silent emotional dependency. The taunt creates tension, the kindness releases it, the cycle forms a bond. Your nervous system becomes conditioned to associate them with both pain and relief. This cycle confuses your emotional compass. You stop judging their behavior logically and start judging it emotionally. You focus more on the relief they give than the discomfort they cause. Machiavelli once said that if you cannot be loved or feared consistently, alternate them. Modern manipulators adapt this principle with subtle emotional tools. They fear losing influence, so they soften their tone after pushing the boundary. The sudden kindness serves a hidden purpose. It prevents you from recognizing the pattern of manipulation. It resets your suspicion before it becomes awareness. Your mind begins to rewrite the narrative in their favor. You tell yourself they did not mean the taunt. You convince yourself they are caring deep down, only expressing it imperfectly. This internal rewriting protects their influence and weakens your self-protection. You critique your reactions more than their behavior. You blame your sensitivity more than their intention. Albert Bandura once said that internal justification stabilizes unstable behavior. Your mind justifies the taunts because the kindness feels like compensation. This emotional trade is how the manipulator keeps you psychologically available. The kindness is also a test in itself. They want to see how quickly you forgive. They want to see how deeply you crave their approval. Your relief after their kindness reveals your emotional need. Your gratitude reveals your emotional dependence. Your softness reveals where they can push next time. The cycle becomes a hidden negotiation inside your mind. You tolerate the taunt because you expect the later kindness. You wait for the softness as if it validates your worth. This reward system creates a powerful psychological loop. Your brain begins to see the manipulator as the source of emotional balance. You unconsciously rely on them to soothe the very pain they create. The manipulator sees this reliance as confirmation of control. They understand that you no longer seek stability within yourself. You seek it from them, which makes your emotions easy to direct. The sudden kindness also hides their strategy from outside observers. Others see the soft moments and assume the connection is healthy. They never notice the small stings that shape your emotional state privately. This duality protects the manipulator's image while damaging your clarity. You feel isolated in your experience, unsure of what is real and what is imagined. This isolation makes you even more dependent on their emotional signals. Slowly, a dangerous shift begins to form. You start seeing their approval as emotional oxygen. You start seeing their disappointment as emotional threat. Once this shift is complete, they no longer need consistent taunts or rewards. Your behavior now aligns around their emotional patterns automatically. Your identity subtly bends toward their expectations without conscious effort. The kindness becomes rarer with time, but more powerful when it appears. The taunts become more common, but easier for you to rationalize. The cycle becomes your emotional baseline without you noticing it. This is the stage where manipulators gain total psychological leverage. They know you cannot disconnect easily because your emotional rhythm depends on them. You become loyal to the source of both comfort and discomfort. But the sixth layer will reveal the final shift. The shift that explains why some people do not stop even when they know they are hurting you. The part where manipulation turns into identity shaping, not just influence. So here is the unsettling question you must face now. If they can alter your emotions with tiny taunts and small kindness, what stops them from shaping your entire personality next? Have you noticed how you start changing in ways you never planned? Your voice gets quieter, your choices get smaller, your confidence feels borrowed. This transformation does not begin loudly, it begins with tiny taunts. The sixth and final layer of this psychological system reveals the deepest truth. A manipulator is not testing you forever, they are shaping you slowly. Your reactions are not just data to them, they are building material. Tiny taunts were never about humor, they were about direction. They trained your emotions to respond on cue, shift on signal, and bend on pressure. Your mind learned to move in patterns that were never your own. Dark psychology calls this identity remodeling through micro-influence. It is a process where your emotional landscape is quietly rearranged. Your strengths shrink, your doubts grow, your boundaries blur. Once this remodeling begins, the manipulator no longer needs constant taunts. Your internal voice starts doing the work for them. You correct yourself before they need to. You minimize yourself before they notice. Machiavelli once said that the greatest power is control without force. Modern manipulators expand this idea with subtle psychological design. They craft a version of you that fits their comfort perfectly. This new version of you avoids confrontation instinctively. It fears disappointment more than disrespect. It seeks approval more than emotional truth. You may think you are being mature, balanced, or peaceful. But deep down, you feel a strange exhaustion that never leaves. That exhaustion is the weight of living in a shape that is not yours. Albert Bandura once said that people become what they repeatedly practice. When you repeatedly practice shrinking, you become smaller. When you repeatedly practice silence, your voice forgets its strength. The manipulator sees this final shift in your behavior. You become predictable in ways that serve their intentions. They no longer need pressure because your identity now cooperates. This is the stage where the manipulation becomes dangerously invisible. Nothing they say feels harmful anymore because you adapted too deeply. The pattern became familiar, and familiarity became comfort. Tiny taunts no longer feel like attacks, they feel like reality. Your emotional compass stops pointing toward what you deserve. It starts pointing toward what keeps them calm. This is the endpoint of the psychological system. Your mind has been shaped in small increments until it bends naturally. Your behavior now aligns with their expectations without a second thought. But here is the most unsettling truth of all. A manipulator continues this pattern not because they are powerful. They continue because you stopped noticing how much of you they already control. The final twist is simple but sharp. They never needed to destroy your identity. They only needed you to forget which parts were originally yours. So the real question becomes the most important one you will ever ask yourself. If tiny taunts can reshape your psychology without your awareness, what else in your mind is being shaped by forces you have never questioned?